Number 8. The Alcatraz Escapees. The Alcatraz Escapees were 3 inmates of the notorious Alcatraz prison who managed to break out of their cells and flee the island on June 11, 1962. Their escape is considered one of the most ingenious and daring prison breaks in history. Frank Lee Morris, John Anglin, and his brother Clarence were all serving long sentences for bank robbery and other crimes. They'd been transferred to Alcatraz because of their previous escape attempts from other prisons. The maximum security prison was known for being extremely difficult to break out of, and until the facility's closure in 1963, Morris and the Anglin brothers were the only prisoners to ever escape. The trio spent months planning and preparing for their liberation. They used spoons and other tools to dig holes in the concrete walls of their cells, which led to a utility corridor behind them. They used cardboard and paint to cover up the holes, and they also collected raincoats and contact cement to make a raft and life vests. They made dummy heads out of soap, toilet paper, and hair from the barber shop, which they then placed in their beds to fool the guards. And on the night of June 11, 1962, they crawled through their holes and climbed to the roof of the prison. Afterward, they slid down a pipe and then made their way to the water's edge. They inflated their raft, paddled away into the darkness, and they were never found missing until the following morning. The FBI launched a massive manhunt for the escapees, but the agency found no conclusive evidence of their fate. They only recovered some personal items and parts of the raft on nearby Angel Island. The FBI concluded that the escapees drowned in the cold and choppy waters of San Francisco Bay and closed the case in 1979. However, some people believe that the escapees survived and made it to the mainland or even another country. There have been various claims and rumors of sightings over the years, but none of them have been verified. These days, the escapees remain on the FBI's wanted list, and as to what really happened to them is a true mystery. Number 7. The Bucky Phillips Manhunt. The Bucky Phillips Manhunt was one of the largest and longest manhunts in New York State history. It lasted for a full 5 months in 2006 and involved the shooting of 3 state troopers, one of whom perished in the crossfire. Bucky Phillips, whose real name is Ralph James Phillips, was a career criminal who spent most of his life in and out of prison. He escaped from the Erie County Jail on April 2, 2006 by cutting through the roof of the kitchen with a can opener. He then went on the run, hiding in the woods and receiving help from some of his supporters. On June 10, 2006, he shot and wounded Trooper Sean Brown during a traffic stop near Elmira. Then, on August 31st of that same year, he ambushed and shot Troopers Joseph Longobardo and Donald Baker Jr. in the town of Pomfret. And sadly, Longobardo succumbed to his injuries on September 3rd. Phillips became a fugitive wanted for murder, and a reward of $450,000 was offered for his capture. He also became a folk hero for some people who admired his ability to evade the authorities and saw him as a rebel. He even left notes and messages taunting the police and expressing his anti-government views. On September 7, 2006, he was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and the next day, he was caught by the Pennsylvania State Police near the New York border. He was hiding in a creek bed and surrendered peacefully when he realized that he was surrounded by officers. He pleaded guilty to shooting all 3 of the troopers and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And he's currently doing his time at the Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. Luckily, though, he hasn't made any attempts to escape since his capture. Number 6. John Dillinger. John Dillinger was one of the most notorious and charismatic gangsters of the 1930s, and he became a legend for his daring bank robberies, prison escapes, and clashes with the law. He was also known as Public Enemy Number 1 by the FBI, which pursued him relentlessly up until his death in 1934. Dillinger was born in Indianapolis, Indiana in 1903. He dropped out of school at a young age due to his difficult upbringing. Then, when he was of age, he joined the Navy, although he deserted just after a few months. Afterward, he turned to a life of crime and was arrested for robbery in 1924. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the crime, which is where he met other criminals who taught him the tricks of the trade. He was later paroled in 1933, and that's when he decided to form a gang with his prison mates. They began robbing banks across the Midwest using fast cars, machine guns, and explosives. They also broke out of jail several times using fake guns, hostages, and bribes. They became famous for their audacity and charisma, and were admired by some people who saw them as rebels against the system. Dillinger also had a reputation as a ladies' man and had several girlfriends, including Evelyn Frechette and Polly Hamilton. He was charming and generous with his money, but also ruthless and violent with his enemies. He even killed several policemen and civilians in cold blood during his crime spree. In 1934, Dillinger became the target of a massive manhunt by the FBI, led by J. Edgar Hoover. He was apprehended twice but managed to escape each time. He even underwent plastic surgery to change his appearance, but it didn't help him evade the law in the end. On July 22, 1934, Dillinger was shot and killed by FBI agents outside of a movie theater in Chicago, and at the time of his death, he was 31 years old. Dillinger's life and death inspired many books, movies, and songs, and he's still remembered today as one of the most infamous and fascinating figures in American history. Number 5. Yoga Master's Incredible Escape. Choi Gap Bok was a 49-year-old career criminal who practiced yoga for 23 years. He was arrested on suspicion of robbery on September 12, 2012, and was put in a detention cell at the police station in Daegu, South Korea. He was held for 5 days before making a daring escape on September 17th by slipping through a food channel at the bottom of the cell. The food slot was only 5.9 inches tall and 17.7 inches wide, but Choi managed to slip through it in 34 seconds by applying skin ointment to his upper body and using his yoga skills. He also used pillows and blankets to make it look like he was still in his bed, fooling the guards who were sleeping at the time. Choi's escape sparked a massive manhunt involving more than 4,000 police officers and helicopters. He was spotted several times in the mountainous area of central South Korea, but he evaded capture by changing his clothes and appearance. He also stole food and money from local residents along the way. After 6 days on the run, Choi was finally caught on September 23rd on the rooftop of a building in Miryang, 19 miles south of Daegu. He tried to resist arrest by throwing tiles at the police, but he was overpowered and taken back into custody. He later said he escaped because he felt humiliated by the police, who treated him like an animal. Choi's escape earned him the nickname Korean Houdini and drew attention to the poor conditions and security of the detention cells in South Korea. Number 4. El Chapo. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman is a Mexican drug lord who leads the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful and violent criminal organizations in the whole world. He escaped from prison twice, in 2001 and 2015, and was recaptured both times, in 2014 and 2016. His first escape took place when he was serving a 20-year sentence for drug trafficking and murder at the Puente Grande prison in Jalisco. He bribed several guards and prison officials and escaped by hiding in a laundry cart that was wheeled out of the facility by a maintenance worker. His second escape was in 2015 when he was held at the Altiplano prison in Mexico State, a maximum security facility. He escaped through a sophisticated tunnel that was dug under his cell's shower. The tunnel was about a mile long and it was well ventilated, well lit, and equipped with a motorcycle on rails that he used to move faster. The tunnel led to a construction site where his accomplices were waiting for him. His escape sparked massive manhunts involving thousands of security forces and international cooperation. He was also one of the most wanted fugitives in the United States, which sought his extradition on drug trafficking and other charges. He was finally recaptured in January of 2016 after a deadly shootout with Mexican Marines in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. He was extradited to the US in January 2017 and is currently serving a life sentence plus an additional 30 years at the ADX Florence prison in Colorado. Number 3. The Libby Prison Escape. The Libby prison escape was one of the most successful prison breaks of the American Civil War. It took place in February of 1864, when over 100 Union officers escaped from Libby Prison, a Confederate penitentiary in Richmond, Virginia. Libby Prison was a 3-story warehouse that had been converted into a prison for captured Union officers. It was overcrowded, poorly ventilated, and infested with rats. Prisoners who were unfortunate enough to be sent here suffered from hunger, disease, and harsh treatment by the guards. The escape plan was led by Colonel Thomas E. Rose of the 77th Pennsylvania Infantry, who organized a group of prisoners to dig a tunnel from the basement of the penitentiary to a vacant lot nearby. The tunnel was about 50 feet long and 2 feet wide, and it took the men just 17 days to complete. Then, on the night of February 9, 1864, the escape began. The prisoners crawled through the tunnel one by one, emerging in the dark and making their way to the nearby James River. They then tried to reach Union lines by following the river and railroad tracks. The escape wasn't discovered until the next morning when a roll call revealed that 109 prisoners were missing. The Confederates launched a massive manhunt, but only 48 escapees were recaptured. The rest managed to reach safety with the exception of 2 men that drowned in the river during their escape attempt. Number 2. The Texas 7. In December of 2000, the nation was gripped by a captivating manhunt as the notorious Texas 7 orchestrated a daring escape from a maximum security prison, leaving a trail of chaos and tragedy in their wake. What followed was a months-long pursuit that tested the mettle of law enforcement agencies and captivated the public's imagination. The Texas 7 consisted of 7 hardened criminals: George Rivas, Michael Rodriguez, Randy Ethan Halpern, Joseph Garcia, Larry James Harper, Patrick Henry Murphy Jr., and Donald Keith Newberry. Their audacious plan unfolded on December 13th when they overpowered prison workers at the John B. Connolly unit, located near Kennedy, Texas. Armed with stolen firearms, the fugitives embarked on a spree that would forever etch their names into criminal history. Initially, the Texas 7 sought refuge in Colorado, where they unleashed a wave of violent robberies to fund their escape and evade capture. And in a brazen act of defiance, they even staged a high-profile armed robbery at a sporting goods store, leaving an officer dead in their wake. As their notoriety grew, the nation became fixated on the fugitives, and the manhunt intensified. Over the following weeks and months, law enforcement agencies employed extensive resources to track down the Texas 7. The pursuit spanned multiple states and involved a coordinated effort between local, state, and federal authorities. The media played a significant role in disseminating information and aiding the investigation, generating widespread awareness of the fugitives' identities and the urgency of their capture. Ultimately, the Texas 7's reign of terror came to an end on January 23, 2001, when one of the fugitives, Larry James Harper, was captured following a routine traffic stop in Colorado Springs. The remaining 6 members were apprehended shortly after, culminating in a dramatic standoff in a Colorado RV park. The Texas 7 case brought to light glaring security lapses within the prison system and triggered a re-evaluation of protocols for handling dangerous inmates. And at number 1, Richard McNair, Master of Deception. Richard Lee McNair was born in 1958 on December 19th. He's a convicted murderer and escape artist who has broken out of prison 3 times using various ingenious methods. In 1987, McNair was a sergeant in the Air Force stationed in Minot, North Dakota, and that's where he shot 2 men who surprised him during a burglary. They both survived initially, but one of them eventually succumbed to his injuries, and as a result, McNair was apprehended and given 2 life sentences for murder and attempted murder, along with a 30-year sentence for burglary. McNair's first escape attempt took place in 1988 when he used lip balm to slip out of handcuffs at the police station. Luckily, though, he was recaptured just after a few hours. His second escape was in 1992, when he crawled through a ventilation duct at the state penitentiary. He was on the run for 10 months before being caught in Nebraska, which is when he was transferred to the federal prison system. McNair's most daring escape, however, occurred in 2006, when he hid in a crate of mail bags and mailed himself out of the federal prison in Louisiana. And once he was out, he cut himself free and walked away. He even fooled a police officer who stopped him by pretending to be a jogger. He became one of the most wanted fugitives by the U.S. Marshals and was even featured on America's Most Wanted. McNair traveled to Canada twice to evade capture and stayed in various provinces where he used fake identities. He was finally arrested in 2007 after a random police check in New Brunswick. He's currently serving his sentence at a high-security prison in Colorado. And from behind bars, he's corresponded with Canadian journalists who's written a book about his life and escapes. If you were trying to escape prison, which method do you think would be more effective? Tunneling a way out through the wall or bribing prison guards? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.